Hi everyone. This is the second session. Me and Brian are meeting again. We will be meeting every day, trying to develop a really robust infinite scrolling or virtual component that will basically help engineers everywhere that are using Blazor to be able to kind of easily and seamlessly, have the pagination aspect of infinite scrolling just built right in with the least amount of effort possible. Before we started this session, Brian, and I had a little bit of chat. He's an amazing person to just kind of talk to. I could talk to this guy all day. And one of the things that he wanted to share, kind of a problem statement. What are we really trying to solve? He's got some notes. He's trying to go through some things, and we're gonna today start the serious stuff. Okay, we told you guys here we are. We're a bunch of engineers that want to build great stuff. I'm gonna let Brian here kind of share his. He put together a Word document where he kind of put in the problem statement, and we're gonna start kind of discussing and conversing and see how far this conversation goes. Just letting you know, none of this is staged, and I don't edit my videos. So basically, if you're hanging out here with us, the only thing that will be different, you'll probably get a cup of coffee on Brian's side and a cup of tea on my side. This is pretty much the only difference. Other than that, we're here. All right. All right, Brian, welcome again. I am so glad to get to talk to you again. And let's go ahead and share your screen and let's talk about the problem. What are we really trying to do? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'll just bring up that Word document we were just talking about. So,
All right.
yes, so basically, I approached Hassan and I said, let's have a look at this project. And so I showed him my POC yesterday, which I demonstrated to you guys.
Yep.
And so, and I thought about this and I went home and I thought, well, my POC was just to prove it to myself that this concept works. And now that if we want to make it a product for the public, we need to consider what the public might need. And so I was experimenting with .NET 6 at the time. So I targeted .NET 6 because I wanted to learn. So first thing I asked Hassan is what we should be doing. Should we be targeting that? Should we be targeting .NET 5?
Mhm.
And he's informed me we should be just targeting .NET Standard and to make it agnostic, to make it agnostic basically.
Yep. Yep.
And then I started talking about how I set it up. Now I thought at the moment we've got it set up, and it's almost like a 3 stage that you have to go through. You have to install the library, you have to set up some injection, and then you got the component ready to use. And I thought we can actually simplify that. We don't even need to set up the injection.
Mhm.
And we had a bit of a discussion about that, and we tended to agree. Sorry, I should turn off my
Yeah, that's fine.
notifications.
That's fine. We're gonna give you there on the side. We are sponsored today by Microsoft News. Good.
I just
We, we
good.
should have this.
I just used this and I turned on presenting, so I should stop them. So
Sounds good. We should have a banner at the bottom there and start selling ads in our videos. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm listening. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, so I just discuss what I've written here is just what I thought we should discuss today, and so I just wanted to make sure these points. So for me, this was just a matter of points. Some points I wanted to make sure we got across, and the other thing I wanted to do is re-demonstrate what I did yesterday and just point out some things. Um,
You guys are gonna
yeah.
love this. Brian just showed me this a second ago, and it's mind blowing. Let's go. So just to help you guys understand, we did a quick demo yesterday about the infinite scrolling, but Brian went back and he wanted to make the presentation, the demo even better. So what he's basically going to show us right now is basically, both the code and the UI and uh, the console piece and how the queries are happening as he scrolls down. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. So this is what I showed you yesterday, and I showed you the component. Um, I showed you the component and how it was wired up. What I didn't actually show you is what it was wired up to, which was the controller.
Yep.
Now, you can't get much simpler than that. Like one
That's
line
the
of code.
simplest thing in the world. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So the important thing here is this is non-queryable,
Yep.
and this is what the enable query is hooking up to and getting, and this is how it gets all the way through to the database.
Yep.
Is because
Yep.
this is presenting an non-queryable here. So let's I'll run that again, and I've got Fancy Zone set up today, and Fancy Zones will keep things in the right spots on the screen for us.
Awesome. All right.
So this time we're going to see the console at the same time as the app is running. So we'll go to the fetch data page. And currently we got, and yesterday I was a bit nervous and I said I had 100,000 records. I only had 10,000 records. This is
Okay.
100,000 records.
100,000.
Uh,
Nice.
yes, yeah. So as you see, as I'm paging, you'll see the queries hitting the database
Nice. Nice.
on the right hand side.
That's
So yeah,
beautiful. That's just beautiful. Look, and as you're going, it's basically on the right side here, it's showing you that it's and you're calling an API, Brian, right? So you
yes.
have an API and you
I'm
have
calling exactly that API I showed you.
that particular API. So you have
Yeah,
a
I'm
UI
calling that
component.
input.
Yep. And OData is taking care of, doing the pagination piece and all that. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Okay. So just before we started this session, I basically went ahead and I said, okay, Brian, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how can we productize this. I want this to be a product, something that people can easily use, simply use, and without any issues, but also at the same time something that is also agnostic, not just on the technology side, but all on the data source and storage side. So this is really interesting because just right before I started this meeting, just about an hour ago, I was hanging out with Sam, who's the lead developer at Microsoft on the OData part, and him and I are running also another project, something called OData Next. And I'm going to show you guys now how all of these things come together. It's actually mind blowing how you're building different pieces and you think these pieces are away from each other, but somehow our brains do not think in terms of lists. I think our brains thinks in terms of graphs, and we try to kind of correlate and connect things together. And this is literally what's happening here. So Brian, I'm gonna share my screen with you now, and I'm gonna make a suggestion. Let's see if you would indulge this, or should we go in a different route? This is our design discussion. So I'm gonna go ahead in here and share the screen. I hope I try not to share this all 45-inch screen here. That would be embarrassing. So here we go. Okay, are you able to see my screen now? Mhm.
Yep, I can. I just
All right,
make it full screen for me. Yep, awesome.
here you go. And then so here's what I think. So this is this is the OData. Let's call it infinite scrolling component just for now. We're gonna agree on the name. Oh, normally for engineers, the naming is the hardest part. Even some people left me a comment in the comment section. They said to me, it's always the naming, man. The naming is the tough one. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I saw the comment. I totally agree, Jess.
Yes, yes. So okay, so you have the infinite scrolling component, and the original plan here is to go and say, okay, this infinite scrolling component is OData friendly. So that basically means if you add in here the right configurations, let's say you have in a configuration, you just want to say, this is my, OData configuration, this is the endpoint, and this is all that stuff. So this is a config in here, and this is your OData configuration. What basically happens is that this component here is going to leverage, this configuration and basically go and hit the API endpoint, and basically retrieve, communicate with OData. Let's say this is an API or the server, and it's basically running OData query. Did I describe that correctly, Brian? This area here?
Yes,
Mm,
yeah. My only
okay.
concern, I
Mhm.
don't know if I'm going too far and thinking it
Yeah, yeah,
through, and
yeah, yeah. Go
is
ahead. Mhm.
we may need to set this up as some sort of factory because a particular
Yes.
client might have more than one endpoint or more than one API that they're hitting at different
I
locations.
couldn't agree more, sir. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So here's an idea that I have. So, okay, this is great. You have OData, right, going on in place and all that. What I'm thinking is, we can take that infinite scrolling component in here, and instead of a configuration, we're passing in here an iQueryable data source like this. And what
Mhm.
this data source is going to be doing, let me flip this upside down because I like to make things pretty. It's a problem. It's OCD. I don't know what to tell you, but it's just how I like things to be. Code and everything. It has to be really lovely. Okay, so here's a data source, right? And then the data source can be an iQueryable. Okay, so you're passing in an iQueryable, and this iQueryable is translating downstream. iQueryable is agnostic. It doesn't care whether you are talking to an OData API, or you're talking to a database like an entity framework database, or you're talking to whatever is out there, right? Because iQueryable will basically receive a query and materialize as the query comes back. So it doesn't matter what is your data provider or data source is. Your common language here would be the expression that you're passing. So this is data provider in here, and it could be an API, it could be a straightforward database, it could be anything that's living behind that iQueryable, whatever that iQueryable is pointing to. Now, what that basically means is that if I go here and I want to talk to a database, or even for all intents and purposes, if you want to talk to a file and the file has data in it, it doesn't matter, because you're talking to an API or you're talking to a database, whatever the case may be. This component will be agnostic enough from a technology standpoint. It's agnostic enough that it doesn't really care whether you are integrating with an API or a database, right? Now, why is that relevant to my discussions that are going on right now with Sam from OData team? This is relevant because we have been trying to work on a component, a modern component that basically takes iQueryable and turn it into raw OData query. So it turns it from an expression into a query. Just like this exact same way that the entity framework does this game today. If you give the entity framework an iQueryable, it will extract that expression out of it and pass that and converts that into SQL command. We're basically building a something very similar that will take the iQueryable and turn it into an OData protocol. Whatever that OData component is, whatever is living behind that scene, that's that's irrelevant. What do you think about that idea?
Do you want to see my prototype for that? That sounds great. I've actually worked on
Mhm,
something similar myself, and I'll share that with you probably
mhm,
after this
mhm,
session.
mhm.
Yeah, but it sounds great. Though I actually really, yeah, that sort of opens up to a much wider audience. Yes.
Yes. I want people to go and say, hey, as long as I'm providing a list or a query, whatever the case may be, we can even, make our component like, I'll tell you this now. Now the ideas are coming, right? This is the storming,
Mm,
norming, forming kind of
yeah,
session.
I love
So, so,
it.
so, 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 so here's what I have in mind. What I have in mind here is that basically something to the effect of, I think you already have that. Somehow we want to say, start from and then take how much chunk. So there's
Yes,
start at, okay, you already have
it's
that in place, which is
a skip
perfect.
and take. Yeah,
What that
yeah.
basically means is that from a productization standpoint, if we go and say, even if your data source, something that implements IEnumerable in general, and it could be anything, even if your data source is just a simple list that's running in memory, and I'm going to tell you in a second here why is that important. A lot of people will tell you, I don't care if a list is running in memory, the data will always live in a serious production, thing that's I'll tell you why memory source is really important. Well, number one is that this is how we're selling engineers on using a particular technology. If they can't try it with a simple way of integrating with a memory source, they won't use it. They won't use it because, if you're requiring people to set up a database or an API every time they want to try your component, they will just be not interested in it. They'll be like, you know what, man, this is too much work than it needs to be, so I'm not going to go and do that. But also more importantly than this, there are situations where you're caching data and you just want to kind of, instead of caching that data, you want to basically go and say, whatever the data that you're caching, I don't want you to pull everything from the cache right away. I want you to only read as much as you need. And that's basically what this amazing component of yours is doing right now. You're basically going and saying, you know, however much you want to consume from that data. I think if we build it this way, Brian, with an IEnumerable implementation, I think there's going to be one kick-ass component that people could actually use, regardless of what technology that's living behind the
Yep,
scene.
awesome.
So let's do this. Let me ask you this. Let's first of all, let's create a repository to contain
Hmm.
all that work. And that repository, let me go ahead in here and just kind of create a repository. Do you still want to call it,
No,
virtual?
I'm open to whatever you
I'll
think
give you
more
I'll
suit.
give you a couple of suggestions, my friend, and I'll let you kind of determine for yourself. This is a you and I are working on this, we're gonna have to kind of storm a little bit on kind of think a little bit. Oh, so there you go. See, I was worried I do that. I shared the entire screen. You know, see, I was just telling you about this like a second ago. Okay, so here's a go. Here's this guy. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Let me put the focus here on this, and I'm gonna go on GitHub in here. And let's just think about the name. I'm okay if we can get out of this session with a good name, Brian. That would be great, right? So, 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 so here's some ideas. When I actually think about names, I will try to put all these names in like a list, and you and I will kind of go through it and think, okay, which one of those makes sense? Let me go back into my notepad here. See you guys who, notepad is actually very useful. People still use notepad. There you go. Okay, let's think about some ideas here. I'm gonna put us on the side here for now, and let's just think about ideas. So here's some ideas that I have. So we know that, from a terminology standpoint, we know that this is infinite scrolling. I'm just throwing some words, right? And also you have virtualization, right? Um, let's spitball this. Let's just see. Um, uh, see, the name is a hard one.
Yeah, yeah. I just put
Uh,
A data in front of the existing component.
You are something else, sir. So if I take inf, which is infinite, like in the calculator, right? And call it inf scroll, that's one. Or we can say v scroll, virtual scrolling. Or we can go and say, of course, it's all inf scroll component, right? But that's a given. We're just trying to find, something that is super super cool and catchy. I just very recently released a library called Exception with the X, like exception. And when I'm working with my team, they're confused when they say exception. I mean, do you mean exception with the E or exception with the X? So they started saying exception when they're talking. See,
Sure.
that's a naming flop right there. That's a problem. Okay, inf scroll, v scroll.
Should
We can
we include the word Blazor because it's particularly
Yes,
targeting Blazor? Yes.
yeah, that's right. Oh, let's try this. This guy, Eagle Hansen. Eagle, if you're watching this, I hope I'm saying your name right. He's the guy that invented B unit for unit
Yes.
testing. He said B unit for Blazor. I wonder if we can say B scroll or B virtualization or
Yep.
B infinite. What do you think about that?
I like the B virtualization.
B virtualization? Okay.
Yep.
I like it too. I like it too. Okay, so let's go back to our repo here and let me jump over to sharing screens. I like that StreamYard thing. This is pretty cool stuff. Okay, here we go. So I can go here and say basically, for the people that are watching this, you guys, this is how we're building a product. I just want you to see. So I'm gonna do like this B virtualization. What do you think?
Perfect.
Or should we call it B virtualize? You liked B virtualization. Let's go this way.
I'm an
So
Australian, so the whole Z thing gets me going.
yeah, this is all. Oh wait, you know what? You know what? That's right. It should be virtualization like this. You know what? This is how much I like you, man. I'm gonna make it with the S, whether people like it or not. I didn't even
um,
think about that.
you guys don't.
Okay, we'll do it with the S. B virtualization. Virtualization. I love it. I love it.
No, no,
Okay.
no, go back to the Z. I'm happy with the Z. Yes.
Are you sure with the
Yes.
Z? Not
Yep. Let's
Z?
go.
Z?
Let's
Okay.
go. Let's go with the wider audience. We're
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
yeah.
So I'm gonna just go here and say this is a Blazor component for virtualization that supports infinite scrolling with any type of data source. data source. This is just a beta, a data source, whether it's an API or a database or just simply a file on your desk, a file on your computer, or just in memory. Okay, so just something very simple like this. And then I'm going to add a README file. I'm going to add Azure pipelines. And then I'm going to add also a license and a git ignore. Of course, we want all that good stuff in there. And I hope that there's like a, do they have like a, let's see, is it C sharp, C sharp? Oh, come on, man. Let's see. What are the options that we have here? Um,
I think it's Visual Studio.
oh, let's try Visual Studio. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, sir. There you go. Okay. And it didn't select any of it, even though I clicked the button. What are we gonna do about this? Oh, it already just selected it. So if I go down to Visual Studio,
Mhm.
oh, this is the license, sorry. Okay, what license do you want to do this?
I'm happy to share it with the public, and it's the whole exercise is to demonstrate
Do you
how we're
want to
doing
do
it.
MIT?
Yep,
Hmm.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
You could also go full Richard Matthew Stallman if you want. Do you know Richard Stallman? Have you heard of that
No,
guy?
no,
Oh,
tell me the
he's
story.
yeah. Tell me.
No, you tell me the story.
Oh,
How did you find it?
Richard Stallman. So this is Richard Stallman. Richard Stallman. He's the dude. You will know him. He's very popular guy. He got himself recently in some conundrum with some statements he made. But what this guy did, at the time when Linus Torvalds was building the Linux kernel, this guy went out there and started something called the Free Software Foundation, or GNU. GNU is not Linux, and
Hmm.
basically he basically his ideas are a little bit, I feel like his ideas are actually too advanced, for our world today. What he's basically saying is that he says if you are I feel like I'm looking at myself in the future with the hair and the beard, and it's scary. But anyway, his ideas around Free Software Foundation is basically that if you build software that is licensed by GNU, you can't close source it. You have to offer the same amount of freedom to the people that will be using your software. So you can't take just someone else's work that they offered it for free to the public and then turn it into a closed source. And he has like he always says, yeah, he always says free as in free speech, not free beer. So just because it's free, free to use, it doesn't mean that it's free of charge. You could have the code, like if you're buying software, if you pay money for software, nobody can tell you what to do with that software. You have the right to redistribute it, to modify it. You have the right. He
Hmm.
has some very interesting ideas. And I think like the thing I like about Richard Matthew Stallman the most, is that, he's not just a code monkey. He's not just writing code and saying whatever happens happens. He's trying to actually bake in some ideas in terms of freedom and accessibility, and making the innovation, keeping that innovation going across the world,
Hmm.
because there are people out there, Brian, that can't afford to buy software, right? They
Yes.
can't afford to pay for a license, and but they're very smart. They're
Hmm.
very smart people, and if you give these people the open source and the code that they need, they contribute very heavily to the survival of our species and our evolution and fulfillment eventually. But anyway, just a little something on the side there around when you go and select. Every time I see GNU General Public License, I always think Richard Matthew Stallman. Definitely a very interesting. If you watch, there's on YouTube, there's something called the Pirates of the Silicon Valley. Watch that. Watch that. That's for
Hmm.
free. It's very nice. Okay, so I have Azure pipelines in here. We're going to set up the pipelines. Be virtualization. I like the name. I like the name. And then in here, what do we have? Um, we have a bunch of templates in here. I'll check with that later. This is not a big deal. I'm gonna leave this here. And then I'm just gonna create the repository, and then I'm gonna have to add you as a co-owner on that repository. What do you think about that, Brian? Do you think that's a good deal? Okay, can I trust you though? I have your
Oh.
idea, so I don't know. All right, so let me add you in here, sir. So what was your GitHub username?
Let me think. I think it's Orac, is it? I'm not sure. Let me.
Orak.
AK. It's my
Okay.
old. I used
Oh,
to play Dungeons and Dragons out of books back in the day.
oh,
That was
like
my player
orc,
character.
Orok.
Uh,
Okay.
no, is it? Am I in there? Let me.
So where are you, sir? Let's see.
I just.
Are you
I'll just
sure
bring
that the
you.
name is not just Brian Parker? Brian Parker.
Brian L. Parker. Try Brian L. Parker.
L. Parker. Okay.
Yeah.
L. Parker. Brian L. Parker.
Get rid
Nope.
of the spaces. Yeah.
Okay. No
Just,
spaces.
yeah.
Nope. Nothing still. Oh, there you
There I
are.
am.
Is that you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's me.
Found ya. Nice avatar you got there, Brian. So listen, it's gonna send you an invitation. You just need to accept that invitation, then immediately you become a collaborator on that. So you're gonna have to click that on your email.
Oh, no worries.
All right, so
I'll
this is
do.
a Blazor component for virtualization that supports infinite scrolling with any type of data source, whether it's an API or database or just simply a file on your computer or just in memory. And I typed memory wrong, so I think I have my first commit right there. Memory. Talk about being nervous, huh? See, I'm here, Okay, so I have that in. So I have that in there. And then what we can do basically is that we want to kind of kind of sit together, a nice README just to help people understand what this project is. I can assure you right now that I know at least, a bunch of people, three or four, maybe five, maybe 10 people are gonna jump right in and they say, hey, we want to help out. We want to be a part of
Hmm?
this amazing product that you're would you entertain that, Brian? Would you entertain people
That
just jumping
I'm
in?
actually. That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm. Yeah, I'm good with that stuff.
All right.
It's
Wonderful. Wonderful.
share the experience.
Okay, so I'm gonna share with some people, like I'm gonna type in here some stuff in terms of, what we really want to accomplish and all that. So here's what I can do. I'm gonna just give people a summary. What do you think about the Brian, what do you think about the whole markup thing? It breaks my heart every time I try to add a picture. I have to use the image, so I can control the sizes and all that kind of stuff. But here we are. So what is a summary of what we're doing? This is a Blazor library to provide engineers with UI components, Blazor UI components that enables them to develop software with infinite scrolling capabilities. The main idea here is and actually it doesn't really like it when I take only one line. Like if I take only one new line, it will do
Hmm.
this. It won't let me actually take a new line. So I have to take
Yeah,
two.
I use an app called Stack Edit from Stack Exchange, and
Oh,
it's
for the documentation for MD and
for
all that.
the MD files. Yes,
Have you tried Visual Studio Code?
yes, I have. When I used to do a lot of Angular stuff, I was always in code.
Let me show you something crazy while we're at it, that I'm working on, just like when you started the meeting, I was just doing this. Check this out. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm documenting my engineering standard. And I'm basically, so you're writing in here and you're documenting right away, like you're seeing you know, see, and here's the heartbreak that I have with the images and all that kind of stuff. Maybe they'll make it better someday, Brian. I don't know. We'll see. So anyway, let me go back to this guy here real quick. We're just gonna put like a quick introduction because we're gonna have to give people examples and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff, and we have to initialize the project and all that. So let me stop here and go back to this guy. And here's a share screen. Here's the window. Here's Brian. Here's the editing. There you go. Okay, back to this guy. The main idea here is to provide a data source agnostic component that may be integrated and plugged in with any backend supporting capability for data, for providing data in the most seamless and easy way possible. Ideally, this product is built to improve the engineering experience for developing UI components in Blazor. Okay, and then, we're gonna put in some examples in here and all that, but we have to start actually writing the component and all that kind of stuff. So okay, so I have all that in place. Now
So
I'm just go
for
ahead.
me, one of the fundamental design things is I really wanted to remove the gap between. So a lot of people love Blazor Server,
Hmm.
and the big problem with them for them is when they go to WASM is the gap between the API and the client.
Mm. Can you
And this
I,
help.
I want I want to add that in. Go ahead, tell me. One
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
mm,
so that's fundamentally what I wanted to close is that close that gap between the WASM client and the API, make it basically 3 lines of code, and then the gap's gone.
this component is to close the gap between the WASM client
Client
and
and the API.
and the APIs.
Yes,
And whatever data source then, what do you think?
yes,
Whatever
yes. Well, I was thinking APIs at the time. So yeah.
data source, that the component can integrate with something as simple as 3 lines of code or less. What do you think? And
Perfect.
we're gonna have to come up with a logo, but I won't take time, coming up with a logo for your component, but our component then, and we'll come up with a nice logo for it. Normally, I just kind of find something that, of course, is gonna be influenced. Like we're gonna have to have a little bit of influence from OData logo, but we can add a little bit of
Yep.
pizzazz on top of it.
Some sort of merge between Blazor and
Yes. Yes,
OData.
yes, yes, please. Yes, please. Absolutely. So anyway, okay, so there's that guy. I'm just gonna, ideally blah, 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 for any questions. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, for any questions or inquiries about this component, please contact the following engineers. Brian Parker. What's your do you want to put your email out there for people, or how do you want people to
It's already out there. Get it out there.
Okay. So what do I say? Tell me.
It's brian.parker@hotmail.com.au.
Okay, brian.parker@hotmail.com.au. See?
Yep.
Uh,
Very
I,
important that the .au.
I don't
I
know if
think.
you guys could tell from Brian's accent and him wanting to use virtualization with the S, but he's from Australia. So, so this is cross, before we started this session, Brian and I were seeing like how long does it take from his place to come to my place and vice versa, and it would take literally a day and a half with an airplane to actually reach to each other. And that's just assuming the airplane will be able to just go across the Pacific Ocean. Like yeah, maybe far in distance, but close at heart. I'll say that much. So so let's go back to this one. And then I'll put myself to, I'll say Hassan Habib, and then in here I say Hassan Habib at live.com. Just contact me on this, email, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And if you need any sort of contribution that you want to do in here, that would be also okay. So let me create this, commit changes. Here you go. So this is the changes, and we have, see, it did this. I was trying to put it like um
Yep.
um you have to you
I
have
like a link. Yeah.
you have to put in another return. People don't say return anymore, Brian. What do people say these days? Enter.
Yes.
Just get a new line or whatever. Okay, Brian Parker and Hassan Habib, super excited. They'll come up with a bunch of for our next session. They'll come up with a bunch of potentially whatchamacallit, logos, ideas for logos and mockups. We're gonna design a logo together because I really do want people to see the entire experience end to end. How is this working and all that kind of stuff. Okay, let's go and do the next thing. I'm gonna start a new Visual Studio project here, Brian. What do you think about that? I'm gonna start from there,
Good.
and I'm gonna have
Yeah.
I'm
Throw
gonna
that
have
other rubbish away. Let's get going.
yes, 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 yeah. Let me start. Let me start the see, talk is cheap. Show me the code, and that's exactly what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be just doing just that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of initialize a new project here. Let me find our screen. I hope I didn't shut us down there. There was this session that I had with the entity framework team where I was recording with them, and I just clicked the wrong button and I shut down the session mid-live session. It was a live session, and people were sitting there. You know what's funny? I dropped off on the third point. I was literally telling people,
Yeah.
hey, there are three new amazing things that we're doing with OData next. The first is blah blah blah. The second is blah blah blah. And then before the third one, I was like, "Trip!" just dropped off. I dropped off
How,
the
how,
call.
how long did you keep going until you realised?
I just watched that a couple of days ago, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so embarrassing. What am I supposed to do now?" Anyway, so 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 I'm just gonna go here. I just want to show people literally every step of the way. This is really fun, and hopefully people would love that, so okay, anyway, so the beautiful thing about this is that creating the OData client that will support skip and retrieve is easy. Like, you don't have to wait for the entirety of OData next to actually happen. We could just create a little node that will handle that API communication, and then the data source will continue to be super agnostic, and that's it, my friend. That's the power right there. So anyway, so let's go and let me go to Visual Studio here real quick. Share screen. Brian, forgive me. They say, the preacher said I could write shorter sermons, but once I get started, I get too lazy to stop. I do talk a lot. I am
That's
very
fine.
sorry. It's a problem, virtualization. Apparently, it can't see, like, the screen share can't see that little pop-up window that comes in with Visual Studio. So I'm kind of stuck here. I can't share it yet, but I'll describe what I'm doing. So B virtualization, that's my solution name. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and click next. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just creating the solution real quick. All right, and we are almost. I need to create this I actually need to create this as a library. So let's go ahead in here and just create this library. And we're gonna create this as a class library. And this class library will basically have all the good stuff in there. If you just give me a second there, it's really sad that I can't share the screen with there you go. It's called Razor class library. So I'm selecting Razor class library, and then I'm gonna say B virtualization, and then I'm clicking next, and I'm gonna create this in a second. Come on. All right. Okay, here we go. Now I'm gonna share Visual Studio. Here we are. Share screen, window, B virtualization. Okay, my friend, can you see the screen now, by any chance?
Yes.
All right, let's see here if we can kind of go out there and make this work for us. Here's what I want. I want to be able to test drive this as well. I want to be able to kind of go and say, I want to build a solution in a way where, we can basically test drive every single step of the way. So first of all, I'm just going to create this new project in here, and the new project will have XUnit. What do you think about XUnit, Brian? Should we go with MS Test or XUnit? Virtualization.
I
Okay.
I've used both. I tend to prefer XUnit. So, yeah.
XUnit. Okay, let's do it
Yeah.
with XUnit then. So that's XUnit. And then I usually just, when I create these new projects, I say delete me. This is just the initial kind of thing. And I normally in the test, I just say should be true. That basically me just going and saying assert true, just me kind of saying, hey, let me test the pipelines, make sure that these pipelines are running and all that kind of stuff. And I'm gonna kind of, just Java, JS, interop. I think this is all kind of part of
Template. Yes.
the bells and whistles that come with. There's a bunch of
Now
imports. And then I don't think I need any of that. And I'm just gonna go ahead in here and say,
there's a few items in the www root folder.
oh, all of that junk. We don't need any of that really.
Hang on, before you delete
Oh,
the folder.
yeah,
Whoops.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
I've,
ahead.
I've noticed. I've noticed I don't know if it's a temporary bug in RC6, .NET 6 RC1.
Hmm.
If that folder does not exist, I'm having a lot of troubles consuming the package. I can create a package, but if I go to consume the package, it'll complain about static assets been missing. So,
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, let's see if I can revert. Let's see. So this is edit. It won't give
so
me.
temporarily on my POC project, I had to leave that folder in there with just a placeholder inside it, and
Just
otherwise
you.
I couldn't. Otherwise, I couldn't consume the library. I could create the package, I could publish the package, but I couldn't consume.
What did you call it? www root? Is that what you called it?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, I think it's some sort of dependency in the compile process for Blazor. So
I'll say it's a bug, to be honest with
yeah.
you. I'll say it's a bug, really. Okay, so I have this in here, and I'm just gonna, here's where I'm thinking here, Brian, and help me, correct me if I'm wrong. How I want to architect this solution is that I want to go and do this. So I break everything. Normally, when I break things, I break them into, there's exposers and there are services that do business logic, and then there is dependencies or external kind of dependencies that handle the dependency. In our case here, things will be a little bit much simpler, but let's just design this together and see how the components that we're going to create are going to look like. So of course, there's the HTML, right? So you have the markup setting up in here. So that's your exposer. That's markup like this. And then behind that markup, there is what I call a service, which is basically something that contains the logic. Every time you scroll, it triggers a call to a function, right? And the function will know where it was last stopped and where it needs to go next, right? And then behind that service in here, I want to go and say, I want to inject in, this is what I call a broker or a dependency. And this broker here will be basically whatever takes in this data source that you're passing in. So the data source that you're passing in is your external dependency that's being injected into your system. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit, and then we're going to have the service kind of give us the kind of capability, because we need to mock that data source somehow, because it doesn't really matter from a test driven kind of fashion kind of thing, to go and say something to the effect of, hey, go ahead and go ahead and basically actually call the actual source that we passed in, maybe in an integration test like end to end. But in our case here, we just want to really test what this guy is doing. And every time, ideally, what this guy is doing, and we're going to define our APIs and our contracts in a second, but ideally, I want this guy to say, go next. So the component is none the wiser. The UI itself is none the wiser. The UI doesn't know anything about, what the UI doesn't really care or doesn't know where it stopped or where it's going. It's not doing any of that calculation. It's none the wiser. It's a dummy terminal. All it knows is that it needs to hit that service API, and this, the actual component that has the business logic, and that component knows where to go next. So
Mhm.
it would probably expose something like get more, get more. And get more basically means, of course, since we're having the component pass in parameters and like start from and take that much chunk, so get more will probably have these input parameters, something to that effect. What do you think about that design?
Okay, so it sounds great, but I'm sort of already thinking about what we've got to interface to. We have to interface to the virtualization component, and it
Yes.
has an interface that it's defined, and
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's going to cause a bit of a problem there between the matching
Oh, because
between
of
what
the wrapping that you're doing,
yeah, yeah.
so in order for us to actually be successfully able to wrap, so there's this native component. So also go back to the screen here. So this is the data pipeline route, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the UI route. Okay, so let me do this way. I'm gonna do it like this, and here's my component. This is your component right here. And normally your component is basically an intersection between the UI route. There's a data pipeline where things are going this way. That's the data pipeline. It doesn't know anything about the UI. But we also gonna have underneath this guy something called base component.
Mm-hmm.
And this base component would be a wrapper around around this native virtualization component that Blazor offers outside of the box. So this way, at any point in time, my friend, if we ever decide to go and say, you know what, instead of this native, virtualization component, maybe you're going to use this other component
Yep.
and bake it in, we won't have to change anything in our logic, right? So this is how I'm imagining this. This guy, in here will reside the native Blazor virtualization component. So that's one
Yes.
guy. Component like this. This is native Blazor virtualization components. This is one guy. And then on this other side up here, we're sending in a UI call that basically says get or retrieve more, right? And this retrieve more, really, what it's really doing is that, well, first of all, you're initializing. So it's offering two things, right? First, the first hit it's offering, it's basically going and saying um, load. And this load will have a thing that says start and count like this. And then you have retrieve more. So once you did the load or initialization, load data, the first hit basically, every time the event triggers, it's just going and saying retrieve more because it already set up the count or the amount of data that it needs to retrieve from this data source. So it doesn't make sense to keep, you know, repassing that data. This way, your UI component doesn't know anything about, where it needs to start or where it needs to stop. It's outside of that scope completely. And all that magic and all that, logic is living in your service layer. Now,
Hmm.
what do you think about that?
Sounds. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
just a bit concerned. The input for the virtualization component again. Sorry, I keep going back to it. Is it actually wants to know? Sometimes it doesn't just keep sequentially asking for the next page, next page, next page. Sometimes if you grab that cursor and drag it straight to the bottom, it'll straight away ask for the last page.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, so if you scroll all the way to the bottom right away, it'll go and say, give me the last page that you have.
Yes.
Ah,
So
interesting.
that's yeah.
What do you think about offering a
It's
capability?
obviously doing some sort of calculation of where the scroll bar is, and
Yes, yes.
yes, but based on the height of the items. So,
But how does it know, like, I guess that's the magic that's in it, right? It knows how big that would be in terms of rendering the data.
yes,
Interesting. So that basically means that somehow it needs to know about the count too, like the
yes,
size.
yes.
Ah, uh-huh, uh-huh.
It passes in a variable which is how much it wants, but expects back how many that were there, sort of as a count. So
Gotcha, gotcha. I think I know for sure that the iQueryable interface could give you that kind of capability and also really cheap. Like it's not really, that expensive in terms of optimization. And we're gonna run our performance test and all that. But would you entertain so okay, so we can actually go in here and say give last page or retrieve last. Would that work?
yeah, or retrieve page because it
Retrieve
might ask
page.
for yeah, because it could ask for you might drag it to halfway. Yeah,
That's right. And it would
yeah.
take maybe page number, something like this.
Yes, it's just
Or
basically like a skip and take. Yeah, but yeah.
should we call it like should we call it something to the effect of page index or page number is fine.
I don't know, or page offset. Hmm.
Page offset.
Yeah,
Page offset. I like it. Page offset. I love it.
'cause,
I love
yeah.
it. Okay, so that's our interfaces. This is our interfaces. So here's what we can do, my friend. We can start tomorrow, in our next session because we're almost at time here. We're almost,
Mhm.
into really, really 10 minutes away from an hour. I'm gonna try to keep it to an hour just so people kind of stay
Yeah,
intact with us and kind of, so here's what we can do. We can start tomorrow, based on this idea. We can start to work on the load piece at least. right? And I'm gonna push this code. I'm gonna set up the Azure pipelines on GitHub, so everything is just running. As soon as you push code, it will kick off the Azure pipelines and try to build it for us. And we could start with the load and see how far that goes. We could actually start with the brokers rather, and have these brokers be, I guess the real challenge here would be when you're setting up the component and you're passing in the data source. You want that data source to trickle all the way down to your broker, and you want your broker to basically offer capability outside, like from that data source, so we can actually mock it and do stuff with it. So we'll see how that one goes. Hopefully that would work out. And I don't know. Do you have any other remarks before we kind of wrap up the session for
No,
us today?
yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm
And
happy.
I'm really excited, Brian. I will share these drawings there's a part in GitHub where you can share issues. So we're
Yep.
gonna basically pick up our features as issues. I wish they just added in there features or something like a features tab. It's not always an issue, but people just create an issue because this is an issue, I guess. It tells you a lot about engineers, right? There's no solutions. There's only issues, and these issues are either resolved or not.
Yep.
So anyway, it was such a pleasure again, working with you today, sir. We set up a repo. We talked a little bit about, we came up with a name, which is a huge achievement, I have to tell you. It's a lot easier to name a kid than name a variable for an engineer. So, I'll
Yep.
tell you that much. And we had a little bit of architecture design, and let's keep pushing this forward. Okay.
It's great. I'm
All
looking forward
right.
to it. See you
Brian,
later.
I'll connect with you. Connect with you tomorrow, sir. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye. Bye.